Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In our previous lecture we learned how to add in a pet to our pet table and how to actually verify that the pet was in the table. In this lecture we're going to add more pets to our table. So here we're going to create a new query to get started. And here we can use our triple quotes to open and close the multi-line query. Then we can use insert to insert a new row into our pet table. We can then pass in parentheses, which of our attributes we want to assign to a pet. So remember, we have here several available attributes: ID, name, gender, and date of birth. These have slightly different data types. We have an integer, a variable character, maximum 20 characters in length, and a variable character, maximum 1 character in length, and a date object. All right, so we can put in any of these different attributes here because none of them have been listed as a primary key, and also none of them have been listed as not null, so we can leave some as null. For example, we could create a pet that just had an ID and nothing else. After we specify which attribute we're going to give the record, we then pass in the values, which in this case is just one value, and I'm going to use a new ID, which is 2. Then we're going to execute the query with cursor.execute and pass in the query variable. The query is going to then return a result, so we can grab the result from cursor.fetchAll and we can paste out our result. Okay, and here for this cursor.fetchAll to work though, our query has to be a selection, because if I run this currently, our result is just an empty list. That's because when you insert a row into a table, the query doesn't return anything. So your result is an empty list. So we actually have to create a new query, and that is going to be to select star from pet. So we could even make this into a reusable query. For that, let's just go ahead and copy the query and call this the select all pets query. So that way we can reuse this query as many times as we'd like. We're selecting all from the pet table. All right. So here we have our query defined. Then, as per usual, we will call cursor.execute. And this time we're going to be executing the select all pets query. Because this is a selection query, it will return a result. So we can use cursor.fetchAll and we can inspect our result. And here we can see we have 1 muffin, none, none. Then we have 2 none, none, none. This shows us that we have 2 different records inside of our table. So here we were able to add in a second pet. Let's create a third pet, and I'm going to do that before I show all of my pets. That way I won't have to rewrite this cell. Here I'm going to create the query variable again. And again, I'm going to use the insert into pet keywords. This time, let's add in some more properties. Like let's put in the ID, the name, and the gender of the pet. Then let's put in the values 3, a name spot, and a gender F for female, and that should be inside of quotes because this here, the gender was a variable character. So any characters have to be inside of quotes, but numbers don't have to be in quotes. That is the syntax for a SQLite query. Then we can run that code cell, but don't forget to also execute the query with cursor.execute query and run that code cell as well. Then you can rerun your select all pets query And look at that. This time we have 3 pets. We have 1, 2, and 3. Right, so that is how we can add more pets into our pet table and how we can verify that they have been added. So we learned that you can put in one or more of the attributes for a pet, because in our case we don't have any primary keys that are required to be filled in, and we don't have any not null values that cannot be null. All of our attributes can be null in this case. But of course, a lot of tables are different. They come in a lot of different formats with many different attributes and specific requirements for each attribute. Join me coming up in our next lecture. We're going to learn how we can build a second table and use it for cross-referencing. For example, what if we wanted to know all of the owners of each pet, but we didn't want to have to put in all of the owner information into the pet table? Well, instead we can have one pet table and one owner table, so we can get a bunch of information about our owners. So join me in our next lecture where we'll learn how to build a second table.